Hey, today we're going to talk semicolons and colons. And the nice thing about semicolons and colons is that there are very few rules. So they're really a lot easier to apply than other things. But I want you to remember that they're salty. Any kind of crazy punctuation, so anything that's not a terminal mark, a period, a question mark, an exclamation point, or a comma, is crazy punctuation. And so you want to use it judiciously. You want to use it at the right time. Now, a lot of these things just give you options, other ways to do things commas do, or that periods do, those terminal marks do. So let's take a look at semicolons and colons. It is really a balancing act. So what they do is they do balance ideas on either side, but they are used in different situations. So first, let's look at semicolons. Now, here's the number one rule, the way it will be used most. Use the semicolon to separate main clauses, sentences, not joined by coordinating conjunctions. It's best to show contrasted ideas. So you'll remember with commas, when we talked about using those commas to connect sentences, it had to have that help of that fanboy, one of those coordinating conjunctions, because the comma is very weak and it can't hold together full sentences. So if you've got a full sentence over here and a full sentence over here, we have to have something in the middle. It could be one of those terminal marks. It could be the period, the exclamation point, the question mark, but it could be the comma and the fanboy. And now we have another option. It could be the semicolon. And you really want to have sentences that go together. What you're doing is instead of giving it that hard stop, you're giving it more of a soft stop and showing their separate ideas, but that they are more combined. So let's look at some examples. Each day is full of choice. We could put a period there. It is also full of opportunity. Again, that's a fine sentence, but we can use the semicolon here to show that there's a balance to them. Check this one out. There's kind of a feeling of contrast. He is still carving surfboards at the age of 90. We could put a period there or an exclamation point. He is still the finest. Same thing there. But we want to create this connection. Then we're going to say he is still carving surfboards at the age of 90. He is still the finest. And so that semicolon connects those together without the need for those fanboys to interrupt it. We could say he is still carving surfboards at the age of 90, comma, and he is still the finest, and that works. But the semicolon gives us a different pace and a different sound for it. The same thing. Now, whenever you want a more formal tone, one of the things to do is to use that semicolon, but use some of these conjunctive adverbs. They're just bigger combining words. Accordingly, however, otherwise, also, indeed. I always used clearly a lot. So there we just want to make sure we have the comma at the end of them and the semicolon before. And here's an example. Going to college challenges you to balance a number of things in your life. Semicolon. However, comma, in doing this, you may find you don't have as much for something you did before. Multitasking is often praised, semicolon. Nevertheless, comma, research shows we do better when we focus on one thing at a time. And with both of these, you can really see that however and the nevertheless, they are those joining words, but we really almost hear that comma. That is one where we can almost hear it. I don't really like to work, semicolon. Nevertheless, comma, I'm glad I have a job I enjoy. And so what that does is it gives us that kind of pause. And the way you can think about it too is it always gets that comma after it because it's really extra information. What we've done is we've got one full sentence. We've got to show there's an end to that sentence with the semicolon, and then we're putting that extra information in there, however, nevertheless, that kind of thing, and the rest of the sentence. So that comma there is that part of the extra information in terms of thinking about that. So, all right, let's move on. The next rule, and this is very rare, use this. If you use this, I've only done it like 3 or 4 times, and I think the 4th of those was in this slideshow. So it really is very rare. But when you do use it, stop. If you start doing it this way, stop and think about does this rule apply? So if you have items in a series, you've got a list, and those items already contain commas, then you're going to put semicolons between them. So for example, here, there are at least 3 ways to write. With a pen and pencil, which is inexpensive and easily accessible, there's our extra information. So we need the comma for the extra information, but then we want to show, wait, there's another one, by computer and printer, which is more expensive, but quick and neat. Oh, wait, if we have a comma here and a comma there and a comma there, eventually we'll be comatose. But or with a chisel and hammer, which is rarely used this day and age. So what the semicolon is doing is separating between each item in the list because we have extra information about each thing on our list. Here's an example when it happens with just a rule we use. Whenever we give a city and state, we put a comma between them. We went to Reno, Nevada, Eugene, Oregon, Bangor, Maine, and El Paso, Texas. And so here you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we've got to have those commas in there. If there was a comma between Nevada and Eugene, if there was a comma between Oregon and Bangor, if there was a comma between Maine and El Paso, we would just have so many commas that it really becomes very hard to read and to decipher. So that rule is all about making sure that it's just clear for your readers. So it comes down to one sentence over here, one sentence over here. You want to slam those puppies together? Put that semicolon in there. Don't just throw that comma in, put a dot over it. It's salty though. Don't do it all the time. If you do it all the time, it's like, it's like hearing one of your favorite songs in a cover you really don't like some really crappy cover. Sometimes the original. Jimi Hendrix owned the Watchtower, where when I hear Bob Dylan's, I'm like, oh, I love that song, but no. So you just don't want to throw it in there too much because it really does becomes very kind of pompous and overbearing. It's like, what, you just got to use all these semicolons, do you? So again, it's this effect you have on your readers that just you don't want to do. But now and then, it really can have an impact. So sentence here, you want to slam them together, throw that semicolon in there. And then once in a while, if you have a list and you've got extra information in it, at the end of that list, instead of another comma, put that semicolon in. Okay, so there's our semicolon rules. Colon rules, straight up, easy peasy lemon squeezy. This is what you need to remember the most. The first part must be a sentence. You use it to introduce an itemized series, a quotation or a statement, a clarifying detail. It helps to place emphasis on these things. But that first part here, is that the right way? Must be a sentence, okay? If you don't have a full sentence over here in formal writing, talk a little bit about business writing and less formal writing. We use it in different ways, but in your formal writing, so in essays, in this class, in all of school, in writing for your job, in writing a letter to a boss you want to work for, use that colon properly. So in your writing, full sentence, then that colon. And I always think it's like a spotlight. Okay, there's my coolness. All right, so here we go. Let's check it out. My mother taught me 3 things. Oh, that's a sentence. I don't even have to tell you what those 3 things are, but if I want to, I would put a colon there, and then I could say, to make my bed in the morning, clean up the kitchen as I go, and to have a happy attitude. That's what my mom said. You will be happy. And here I am, being happy. But first part, my mother taught me 3 things, full sentence. So boom, I popped that colon in there. Check out another one. At the end of the semester, the students danced and sang. I don't have to tell you what they danced and sang. I'm just telling you they danced and sang. But if I want to tell you what they danced and sang, then boom, no more English 1301. Hurrah, hurrah, it's all done. So, boom, because I got that full sentence, I can put that in there. So, if the quote, but remember, if the quote following the colon forms a complete sentence, capitalize the first word of the sentence. So here, because no more English 1301, hurrah, hurrah, it's all done, those are both sentences, I'm going to capitalize those 2. We'll talk about capitalization a little more. Key thing to remember is, what do we have over here? We've got a full sentence, and then boom, we can pop in that colon. Um, in my life, I have only one regret. I've done a lot of stupid things, made a lot of mistakes. I've learned from them. But this one, folks, if you haven't done it, don't do it. I should have never started smoking. See, I didn't have to tell you what it was, but boom, there it was, just like that. So, key thing to remember, have that full sentence up front, and boom, that colon really points to it, so it adds more emphasis to what's on the other side. All right, now here's where people make mistakes with colons. Place they make mistakes with semicolons is either it's not connecting two full sentences, or they're just kind of being thrown in like commas all the time. So don't do those things. But the place that people make mistakes with colons is they allow it to disconnect the sentence parts that belong together, such as the verb and its objects, a preposition and its object, an infinitive and its object. Wah, 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 wah. Oh my goodness, that's English teacher talk. Let's look at an example. It'll make more sense. The trainer began harping on, and people will put a colon. I found myself doing this. I am also people. But no, that's not a full sentence. The trainer began harping on the receivers, the offensive lineman, the quarterback, and the second string kicker. And you can see here that this is one of our comma rules, because the trainer began harping on the receivers, the offensive lineman, quarterback, second string kicker. We're just saying, been harping on all of these players. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 things. We've got commas for a list, but we don't just stop with the trainer began harping on. Another place that happens is, let me get my clicker back, is I like a number of fruits such as. Okay, what, right? Since that's not a full sentence, boom, we don't put anything. I like a number of fruits such as pineapple, dragon fruit, papaya, and mango. Um, with those, it's really important. That's a lot like, for example. People always want to, and again, I'm people, so I do this too, to put, for example, colon. That's just not a sentence, for example. So whenever you do that, make sure that when you have that colon, double check, ask yourself, could I put a period there? And if you could, and then you just have this list hanging out, then boom, put that colon right in front of it, and it gives you that list. So that's one that is really common, such as, for example, those kinds of things. Just make sure you got that full sentence in your formal writing. So basic rules. Use semicolons to connect two closely related sentences. So if we're going to hook those sentences up, one next to the other, we don't want to put a period, we don't want an exclamation point, we don't have a question in the middle, you can put that semicolon in there and not have to have and, for, but, so, anything. If you do use one of those bigger connecting words, make sure and put a comma after it. Usually that one you can hear. And then if we have a list and it has extra information in it, then we can use that semicolon between each item in the list. Just make sure that's what you're doing it for. Like I said, I've rarely used it. So it's one of those I want you to remember, and then when you need it, you say, oh, wait, what was that? There was something I could do that Kelly told me about. So you can look it up, that kind of thing. And then the colon, the big rule is really is make sure you've got that full sentence over here. And then you want to give a reiteration. I only have one regret. Boom, I should have never started smoking, right? What is, these things are balanced. Same thing. I should have never started smoking equals regret. Regret equals I should have never started smoking. So it just goes back and forth. In math, that colon's proportion, right? How do things balance out against one another? So with that, full sentence here though. Remember, whenever you write, and this is one of the things I do, and I catch myself about to do it or doing it, and then I fix it, because we see it so much, we become just kind of used to doing it. I'm an English teacher, I know the rules, but we see it so much that we become used to doing it. So we see that, for example, colon. We see that, for example, with the or such as colon. Just remember, no, if it's not a full sentence, don't do that. Now, there are other places you use the colon. For example, in your business letters, you will say, dear whoever, colon, whomever, him-ever, he-ever. We'll go over he, who, him, too. So, colon. There are places where you might not have a full sentence, but you have a bulleted list where you've entered and you have it down there. That's business writing. I was talking to my sister earlier, and she was like, "Oh, explain the rules of semicolon colon." I explained them, and I said, "Now there are other places where you don't follow, like gotta have a full sentence there." And I said, "It's like I talk to her differently than I talk to y'all. That doesn't mean it's wrong, or there's anything bad or better about one or the other. It's just different language communities." So here we're practicing formal writing. We're really thinking about writing for those people who are very picky, who have an eye for this, who know those kinds of things. You learn how to write for that stickler for grammar, that person who's crazy picky, and then whenever you're writing in another situation, you'll know how to do it the right way. So that really just about wraps us up with that. If you have questions, thoughts, answers to the meaning of life, totally let me know. Remember that when you learn the rules like a pro, you can break them like an artist. So we'll see you next time.